episode 109, ready to go. It's in the bag. We're recording on a different day. ABB, how you doing today?
Hey, doing great. We're back at a normal episode, which feels crazy. I feel a little out of practice. I went on the live to test out the disc, and I realized it was on my personal Instagram, not the in the bag one. So a little rusty. We've been out of the pocket for a few, but hey, we're back at it with what you know, what you love. Disc versus disc. Who's the champion? Only, I guess I decide.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we have influence, but the true decision of the recommendation comes down to the man with the shipping box. Really,
that's true.
I guess is the best way to put it. So,
he who ships has the power. I think it was Hermes said that.
It would be so funny to me if like one day like you weren't able to ship the disc, so Jason had to ship the disc, and when Jason goes to ship it, like he looked at it and he's like, nah, I just really don't like this disc. And so he just ships the other one anyways. Yeah. The guest is so confused. Oh,
yeah. Oh, I thought I was throwing flippy mid ranges. This is an overstable 13 speed. Weird choice, guys.
Jason's like, hey, but the Fisher time lapse bombs, man. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Well, hey, we have a very special episode. Looking forward to it, y'all. We're talking about this is going to be an episode, I think, in terms of disc recommendation, that most people have a preference on this from the get-go. And we even tried to go with something for what I recommended for Brad to even try that was not traditional, like, because we both have a preference in this slot already. But the reason I was really excited to do this episode, and I'll say this before we even bring in our guest Travis, is that I think a lot of people, when they start, end up with a bag closer to Travis's in this slot in particular. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, if I have a disc that does something similar to this really well, why would I even want to make the jump into this next category that we're going to test out? And I personally feel like when you make that jump, it actually brings so much more consistency to what you're trying to do. So that's why we ended up going there. So I'll be very curious as you talk through this bag, because there's definitely some discs in here, Brad, that I think you are a lover of as well. So
yeah, I was just happened to look at them now. I'm like, okay, I can see this, but yeah, well, I'm excited for the episode again, near and dear to our heart. So let's just go ahead and jump in.
Let's do it. Welcoming in the bag, Travis. How you doing today, sir?
Good morning, Robbie. Good morning, Brad. I'm doing quite well. How about yourselves?
Hey, we're doing great. I'm really just admiring like the aesthetic of like your background right now. I just really feel like I'm like back in the 90s again, and I love it. You just feel you feel like a very like Midwest emo setup to me. Like that gives me that vibe. So hopefully that's a compliment, by the way. If those of you who are not watching, just very like nice setup in the back. I enjoy your background is what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, my man. No, that I take it as a compliment. That's the vibe I'm going for. And 90s is a compliment too, because I think this is like 70s to me. But it's always funny looking back, because I'm always surprised at how 80s the 90s looks to me now, looking back to it all. Like
yeah, I think definitely. Like I guess I'm thinking of 90s because looking like 90s movies that were supposed to take place a little further back than the 90s. So that makes sense to me. Oh. It's weird how that works. Anyway, this is not a movie podcast. This is a disc golf podcast.
It sure is.
I'm really excited to dive in your bag. Again, we're recommending something in a slot near and dear to both of mine and Robbie's heart. And again, Robbie said at the top of the episode, but this is a slot that's going to be very much preference. So we'll talk a lot about more about preference, less about the actual, I guess, diversity of the discs, I guess, and from a flight perspective. So excited to talk about that. But before we get into your actual bag, we got to get to know you a little bit. So, Robbie, let's get to know Travis a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some standard questions we asked Travis. And so our first one is, how long have you been playing disc golf?
I've been playing. It'll be coming up on just like, so I started in April, halfway through April this year. So May, June, it'd be 3 months in July here.
Okay. Wow. So, brand new.
I love it.
Brand spanking new.
Yeah. So we are super excited to have you here. I think about this slot and I tell people, like, jokingly but not jokingly, because it's actually just true, is that I did not discover this slot. I started playing in 2012, didn't discover this slot until 2019. So how I did this slot was I threw tomahawks with an XT Nova and a Innova Stingray. So it was not the proper way to do it. I'll just say that. So I love the freshness of this. And I think, just being even 3 months in, you look at your bag and you're like, hey, this is sick. Like, I love kind of the variance. And then there's a couple discs that you see like, oh, that makes total sense. I can see why those ended up there. So very excited to kind of talk through that. But when we want to get to know you in your game a little bit, so let's say we take you out to a field 3 months in, Travis, and we said, all right, we're going to put a basket X amount of feet away from you. How far do you feel like you can reach it forehand and backhand?
Okay, cool. Just in the last couple of weeks, I've unlocked some new distance, so I'm able to like comfortably, like a lot of the baskets on my home course here are pretty open. Not a lot of gaps to hit. A lot of the gaps are far off the tee pad, but I'm probably comfortable getting to the basket like 250, 300 backhand. I'm throwing, 300, 325 now backhand, but, comfortably I can land it in range where I want it, kind of that 250 to 300 mark backhand. And then forehand, pretty inconsistent with the forehand. I use it a lot for like up shots where I can just be looking at the basket. But, I can get up to that 200, 250 range with the forehand as well. But yeah, just a little less accurate. Sometimes I'm throwing it up into the trees and still got a bit of a scoop to it. So when I hit it, it feels good, but I don't always hit it.
Hi.
I hear that.
I got to travel a good bit these last 2 weeks. And one of my favorite parts about traveling with disc golf is not only getting to see new courses, but getting to see like a new group of players. Because at this point, like even in my local scene, there's obviously, I've not met everyone who plays disc golf in Birmingham, but I've got kind of the vibe and I know the courses and the expectations. And so it's always fun, like showing up and meeting just an entirely new group of players. And that scoopy forehand you're talking about, I played with 3 very different cards at the same course. And that scoopy forehand was 100% the play. Like, oh, this hole moves in that direction, like left to right. It's clearly a forehand hole. And his friend like gets up, throws it, scoops it, and the other guy was like, why didn't you throw the turnover? He's like, I gotta work on it sometime, dude. So respect. Okay, so we put you in the putting circle, Travis, and we said, all right, you're gonna make 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25, and 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making in each station?
So I've been out trying to fix my putt lately, going from a spin putt to more of a push putt. So I got some help from Birdie Fam members with that. Shout out to Justin and Hydraulic Picker and Zach as well in there. They helped me out a lot. I posted a video and they got me pushing in the right direction. So I was just out this morning, threw 10 from each. I hit 9 out of 10 on 15. I hit 6 out of 10 on 25 and 0 out of 10 on 40. I can hit 40 now and again, but it's not something like I just went out and threw 10 and I wasn't trying to juke the stats too much or anything. So I kept it clean and 0 out of 10 from there. But
Brad, I don't know about you, but I love that answer. Like,
yeah, I think it's a great answer. No, I respect the integrity. That's what we're about. Again, you cannot grow and learn if you're not honest with yourself. So I think that's great.
And we have lots of people that'll come in like hope and a prayer and all that, which is also a valid answer, like completely valid answer. I think it takes a lot of guts, Travis, to be like 0. That's 0. How many I made from 45 feet. 0. So I love that. And then the final question would be, at this point, what would you say is the biggest strength of your game?
I don't know really. Like probably putts within the circle. Like I'm pretty consistent when I'm, from that 20 feet and in range. It helps me a lot getting stuff. I play with a lot of guys who can outdrive me like every single time, but you don't think they work on their putts too much. So, I can get a leg up on them in the circle like that. So that's probably it right now. And then just kind of whatever. I skateboarded for a long time, and, getting out and meeting new people in the community is a big thing. So probably just my like getting out and networking skills, getting to know people who are better than me and learning from the game from them. So that's probably another one, is just I'll sponge it up from you. If you let me hang around too long, I'll soak it up. So
I love it. That's such a good answer, dude. Well, we want to dive into your bag a little bit, and I will say right off the bat, you've got I don't know if they're from the same manufacturer or what, but I talk about a lot of Frisbees, and I see 2 discs in your bag that I don't think I've heard of. I don't know about you, Brad, but
yeah,
you might have even heard of them. But we're going to start with your drivers. So there's a pretty drastic jump in your bag from 9 speeds all the way down to mids. So I love, right off the bat, I will go ahead and throw the compliment that 3 months in, the fact that you only have 9 speeds shows that you are sponging the community, because that is impressive. I feel like the number of people who are 3 months in who don't have a distance driver in their bag, so little. There's like, I have the Blizzard Boss in my bag. I have a Wraith. There's some form of a driver usually in there. So I love this. I'm just going to dive into the one that intrigues me the most. What is this Draconics?
Yeah. Now, I know you said I don't need to bring them out, but I got to give a shout out to these. So it's a Canadian manufacturer. They're new on the scene. Discape Disc Golf out of Toronto. And this Draconics is their distance driver. They just released their Pioneer set, a little starter set. I really like the plastic. Really like what it does for me. It's pretty understable drive. It holds the turn for a while and fades pretty reliably at the end of it. I like it. It's great for hitting trees too. Hit a lot of those with it as well. So
yeah. Well, what is it, more of like a premium plastic, or is it a base plastic?
It's I'd say it's maybe more of a premium plastic. Like what would
like
I compare it to
or
here?
Something?
Yeah, like maybe kind of this like Prime Burst from Dynamic discs. I got a Prime Burst here, Vandal, and it's pretty similar feel to that. So
okay. Very nice. Very nice. Is the Sky Tern and the Aquarian, is that the other parts of the set?
Yeah, those are. Yeah, they're all named after dragons with bad dragon stamps on them. They're pretty cool.
Okay. I love it. I love it. So moving to, you have the Thunderbird and the Vandal. What kind of differences are you seeing in your Thunderbirds and DX, which is, I feel like, an important note here. What kind of differences are you seeing in those flights between the Vandal and the Thundy?
So the Vandal, if I throw it right on a bit of Hyzer, I can get it to kind of stand up, turn a little bit, and get a little bit push with that a little bit of extra distance to, kind of fighting the natural turn on it, and so I can get a little bit of good distance out of it. I probably shoot that when I'm, maybe trying to hit something a little bit more straight out the gate. Thunderbird, I bring it out when I need kind of like a bigger fade, kind of similar distance, but a bigger fade, and something that's just gonna, not necessarily turn, just kind of hold that straight flight and then fade right after. So use it to get around, around trees or mandos and stuff like that out on the course. So.
Okay. Brad, I know you have the Thunderbird. It feels like comes in and out of your bag depending on how you're feeling with your vultures at the time. Do you have a lot of experience with the Vandal?
I don't know that I've ever thrown a Vandal. I was just sitting here thinking about, it's just an interesting disc. Like, I've felt it a ton, right, in the warehouse, and I just have never thrown it. Do you find that, like, is it comfortable in your hand to throw? Do you notice any like big hand feel difference between that and like a Thunderbird?
Not necessarily. I don't think. speaking of hand, feel like I had a 12-speed driver in my bag, and I just found like, it wasn't going nearly as, it's like I could throw all the other discs just as far basically. And I was like, okay, I'm not ready for this, right? I just wanted to get one to try it out and was like, I'll get there sometime. But those I found super sharp in my hand, like just didn't feel nice in my hand at all. And no, the Vandal and the Thunderbird, I feel they're pretty similar in my hand. But yeah, I'm also, I putt with like 3 or 4 different putters. Like I maybe have a little bit of hand blindness going on right now. So
that's not a bad thing right now. That's not a bad thing. Yeah, because the only thing I can recall about the Vandal is like every time I picked it up, I'm just like, no thanks. And then I put it like, put it with the order or put it back or whatever. So I'm gonna have to give it I like the description you gave of it. It seems like something really nice, like something that will, it's always nice to find a disc for you. And again, I think it's like a preference and like really depends on like your arm speed and things like that. But finding a disc that like you can get it to turn pretty easy if you want it to, but it won't like burn and roll over. But if you like give it enough hyzer, it'll just like kind of push really far without doing a whole lot of anything until the end of the flight. For me, I feel like those discs are really hard to come by. And I think it's just dependent on the person too. I know there's your standard discs that kind of do that, but it definitely intrigued me to go feel another one after this conversation, though. I got to be honest.
Nice. Yeah, it's probably the least thrown out of the 3 of them. But just in the past couple of weeks, I've been trying to just playing around a little bit more with the angles, not trying to throw everything totally flat, and finding that I'm just kind of working a spot into it in my bag. So,
not to jump down to the mids before you're ready, Robbie. I just had a question. Are you, I guess it's called a Skyteron? Sorry, butchering
your
this
guess
dragon.
is as good as mine, Brad.
Yeah. So this is the 5402, the mid, like your overstable 5-speed. Are you seeing a big distance gap between that disc and your Thunderbird? Or are you throwing them pretty similar? And, I guess I'll ask you that question, then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yes, I do. I can push the Thunderbird probably, 50 feet further comfortably or so, somewhere in that range. But yeah, just in the last like week or two, I'm able to throw, like I'm throwing my putters as far as I was throwing my mids, and I'm throwing my mids as far as I was throwing my drivers. And now the drivers I got to be careful with them not to be throwing them OB or past the basket sometimes now. So that's good feeling. So
that's a great feeling. Yeah, so that's what I wondered, because I mean, at the beginning, right, and you're kind of like, I think, progressing faster than maybe most, because you are being willing to absorb the information. Your 0 of 10 answer said a lot about you, which I think is great. So you're going to be soaking up a lot of feedback and be pushing. You'll probably progress a little faster than most, but I know initially that's the big thing, and you kind of already said it. There's like a point when I felt like all of my discs were just going the same distance. It didn't matter. Regardless, putter was going just as far as my driver, and then there's a point when they start to kind of separate, and I was really curious how separate I figured based on the answers your putters and mids were separate, but I just wondered if there was a lot of mid, like dry or 9-speed separation at the moment. So, and because usually people in that situation where there's not a ton of separation, they're like, okay, well, the Thunderbird, I'll just pick that one. I need like more fade, or I need some ground play, or I need to, do X instead of my mid range. So I was just curious. I wanted to clarify that before we started talking about mids.
Yeah, if you would have asked me a month ago, it would have been a much smaller gap between them all, and probably obvious that I shouldn't be throwing something that fast. I should probably just stick to the lower speed stuff. So
yeah, and I was also curious, just going from 5 to 9. Instead of like 5 to 7 or 5 to 8. I was just curious. There's a lot of, I guess, different theories there, but I was very curious. So let me ask you that. Is there a reason you prefer the 9 speeds versus like a 7?
Only that's what I got. I kind of just went online, bought some discs, and got some stuff that, said it was beginner friendly, wasn't trying to bite off more than I could chew. So I just got some stuff. And actually it wasn't until I started loading stuff into disc RPM or whatever a month in that I was like, oh, I got some big gaps here. Like I'm jumping big speed gaps. So some of that stuff, like I don't even think I've thrown, maybe up 6 through 8 speeds. So nothing to really compare it to at the moment.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Robbie? Is that something you would recommend he like tries, or you think just like leave it alone at this point?
Yeah, it just depends. I think that there are lots of people who it is a hand feel preference in terms of those seven, like for instance, the Crave comes in, I think it's a 6.5 speed technically. And I know lots of folks who obviously love the Crave. They talk highly of the Crave. I feel like in the gyro community, the Crave is becoming more and more of a like, I love it or I hate it type disc. Like it's definitely polarizing, not in a terrible way. It just kind of is because of the size. And I think some people feel those 7 speeds. Like for instance, I have huge hands, but I love 7 speeds. 9-speed drivers I struggle with on a backhand because I'm like, my hand can't decide, is this like, am I supposed to be gripping it distance driver vibes or am I control drive? Like, how do I handle that? So I can see 9 speeds kind of answering that gap, but there's some 7 speeds that you just get out there and you're like, man, I can absolutely destroy these discs. And they go so far. I mean, the fact that Calvin Heimberg throws an eagle like 450 feet comfortably shows that those things can cook. So I think it's definitely worth trying some. It's just finding the right ones that for me, I would want to, if you're not throwing the Vandal that much, that's kind of the slot that I would be like, I'd try to find a 7 speed that fills that gap rather than, oh, I want right off the rip, if I'm trying 5 or 7 speeds, do you want something between the Sky Terran and the Thunderbird? Because that will help. But yeah, I think there's definitely some room.
I'm sending you this disc off of my shelf. So man. I pulled this out of my collection. So you need to throw this disc. It's coming with you along with the disc recommended today. You need to throw that.
Thanks, my man. That's awesome.
No problem. That's what he needs. That's what he
choice. Needs. Yeah. Great choice. Especially because if you're practicing throwing flat, like you said, Travis, I think that FD is going to do wonders for you. Because like the C-line FD for me personally as a Hyzer thrower is like, it does a great job. The very straight disc is going to stand up. It's going to ride straight every single time. But it's like, I'm going to have to yam that thing straight off the shelf for it to get up and like move right at all for me. But that's because I have a problem of I throw everything on Hyzer. So tough look. What's not a tough look though, is you have some great mid ranges and one of them not very popular. I'll just go ahead and say this. So I really want to know, how did you get a Coyote 3 months in that you were like, yeah, this is making the back?
Yeah, I thought this one would come up. So my wife, she used to play quite a bit of Frisbee, like, you know, catch Frisbee and stuff, ultimate Frisbee in college and stuff like that. Her brother, my brother-in-law, gave her a disc, like heard about disc golf and was like, hey, you got to get into this, and gave her this mid-range Innova Coyote for Christmas one year. This was before we met even, I think. So years and years ago, we've been together like 13 years or something. So she's had it a really long time and she never really played with it. We always kind of had it around it, you know, moved it from garage to garage and house to house as we moved around. And then just recently, like when I picked up disc golf, it was like, hey, we have a disc around, don't we? So I guess a quick story about how I got into disc golf. I played board games with some fellas in the community here, new to the city and stuff. So it was just like, didn't have a lot of friends here, and went out to like a free board game night get together and met some guys, ended up being pretty good friends with them and hanging out with them quite a bit. They invited me out to the disc golf course one day. So I showed up with my single disc, my single Innova Coyote, and they were like, oh, you know, they basically gave me the same eye roll as like, you know, I didn't have all the, you know, my D20, all my different dice and stuff like that. The first time we were gaming, they asked about my dice, you know, like, I don't know, I've never played that game. I don't have these dice. So they gave me that another kind of like eye roll, like, oh my goodness, man, we got to help this guy along. So they gave me a couple new discs. But yeah, that's what I was throwing to start with, was just that guy. And then a couple of discs that my buddy gave me. So
that's incredible.
The origin. It's the coyote's the origin story is what really it is.
It is, and it's the only ace I've got. Like I got an ace. Actually, it was my 8th time out playing. I was logging my different, times out playing and stuff like that, and I aced it on like a 153-foot hole out in another town or whatever. Kind of this tunnel shot through these trees, and was just like, of course I'm by myself, right? So I'm like, who's going to believe this? Yeah. But yeah, now I got to keep it in my bag because it's like, it's a lucky old thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was with, like I said, I traveled a lot, and I was with a guy, and he's like, man, I hope I get the ace today. I've never had one. And I was like, oh, how long have you been playing? He was like 3.5 years. And I said, well, don't worry about it, brother. It took me 8 years to get my first ace. So that is 8 years, 8 rounds. Well played, Travis. Well played.
Honestly, if I could donate that ace to somebody who needed it more, who's been playing longer, because it's just a lucky thing, right? But if I could, I would, because I'd be hooked on this sport either way, whether I got the ace or not. So I mean, I think it helped crystallize it a little bit. But I mean, I'm always, when I get into something, I'm just like fully in. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, looking at the coyote, how does it fly different than your buzz?
Yeah, the buzz holds a straight line for a lot longer, I think. The buzz is also like, I'd say the buzz is a little bit more comfortable in my hand. The coyote's pretty domey, so it's a bit of a different feel. I don't throw it too much, so I'm kind of gotten a little bit more used to like a little bit flatter top on the disc and a little bit like just a less deep of a hand feel on it. So I think it fades. I'd say it fades a little bit more too. Like it's got a more decent fade on it. So yeah, that's probably my uneducated opinion so far on them.
Okay. Hey, I believe that. I'm happy to hear that as well, though, because I feel like, and Brad, you can tell me how you feel about this, because I feel like the buzz had a chance early on in your disc golf career to make it in, but how the buzz is advertised for most people is not how it flies in terms of flight numbers, but it sounds like it is getting that proper flight for you, Travis, which is kind of unique. Did you find that when you were 3 months in, Brad? Because I'm sure you probably had a buzz in your bag at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I threw the same pink buzz for like 2 years probably. And yeah, definitely at first, I just feel like a Z buzz, and yours is not Z, is it? Yours is like a die.
ESP? Yeah.
Or ESP. Sorry, I just got really confused because I saw the dynamic disc logo on it, and I was like, hold on. What is happening here? Anyway. So yeah, initially it was more overstable for me, because again, I wasn't throwing as far, my form was bad still, some of those things are still true, but it was like definitely had more stability. It took a long time to get it to fly like really straight, which is, I think, it's, to me, the buzz has a reputation of being like the straight go-to reliable mid-range, and I think it takes a lot of work to get there. On a Z1 at least. I think more of like Buzz SS is probably more of what I think a buzz really is in people's mind. So the fact, and maybe the fact that your ZSP helps it be pushed a lot straighter out the gate. But yeah, I think the buzz in general, it feels good. I mean, it feels like it, to me, I kind of gauge like that straight mid-range slot, like how it feels against a buzz or a beat-in buzz, I guess. So I still kind of use as a metric, maybe, because I think it's like the universal language people speak in mid-ranges. But like it feels good. I kind of want things to kind of like, the hex really does feel a lot like a buzz, if we're being honest. Like there's a lot of similarities, except the hex flies like I want a buzz to fly, like off the shelf. That's the only difference. And that's why that's what's in my bag versus a buzz. Because I really do love the buzz, especially those 20th anniversary ones that just came out that had like the whatever it was, the different bottom. Basically, it's a different tooling. Like those were incredible. Like they made me think about it for a second. But again, still a little more overstable than I want that slot to be in my bag. So it's good that you're finding like this one. Did you buy this one used or did you get this one new?
This is I would call it a library copy. I've got a friend who like reviews discs and stuff. He's got like a ton of discs that he doesn't keep in his bag, and so he lent it to me. So it's old. It's kind of beat up, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why you really have to, like a regular buzz, you really just have to season in to get to that flight that you're describing, I think. So hopefully that answers your question, Robbie, but that's
totally.
Kind of how I feel about it.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm like sitting here staring at it in disc RPM, and until you said something about it, I was like, I just hadn't even connected that the DD logo on it was weird. And then you were like, oh, wait a minute, hold on a butt, huh? And it takes me back to like most listeners, and especially if you're a COVID golfer or later, is that Dynamic Discs started as a retailer, not a manufacturer. And so they were like, oh yeah, we'll take some buzzes. We'll slap our stamp on there and all that. So Macbeth, like famously, had some Dynamic, I can't remember what mold it is, but it's like, it truly, like he had Dynamic Innova in his bag, which is immaculate. So speaking of things that shine, Glow Paradox you have in your bag. Do you throw the Paradox still, or is it kind of unique, or what's it do in your bag?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So like I said, I went out with a Coyote that one day, and my friend gave me a couple of these MVP tournament discs, gave me this Paradox and what is it, the Envy. So for the longest time, I thought the Paradox was a driver because I didn't know anything. For like, it was like a month solid, I was throwing it, and it was my off the tee pad throwing this thing. All the people I played with were like, oh, I hate that disc. You got to get that thing out of your bag. Like that thing just flips over. Like, hey, they just did not like this thing. Guys with bigger arms, right, and stuff. And I was really liking it because I felt like it gave me such immediate feedback on how I was throwing it, like the angles that I was throwing it. Like if I tried to pull on it too hard and, I was rolling my wrist too much, like that thing was turning over for me. So I had to really concentrate on, throwing it nice and flat or with a bit of Hyzer. I couldn't be, turn the nose up at all, do any sort of Hyzer angle. It was just like boom to the ground. So I felt like that it was a good teaching disc to start with. It's something that I still throw, and I'm having to throw it a little bit differently now. Like I have to put a little bit more Hyzer on it. I'm putting, a little bit more arm speed into it and stuff. So I think if I try to throw it too flat and too hard, it's burning over, it's going to the right, and it's dumping and rolling. So yeah, it's good. I actually, rest in peace, I lost it just the other day, like driving at the home course, throwing a bunch of stuff off the tee pad, came back and was counting discs and was like, oh man, it's gone. So an APB out there for my Paradox, if anybody in Yorkton finds that thing, I want it back. So, but my friend luckily has a bunch more of those tournament discs, so he's gonna hook me up with another one. So
okay, that's great. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting slot. I think that's, Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Paradox is kind of a unique disc in that way, on like how easily flippy it is. Like I know that's one I'd recommend if dad plays and they bring in like their son or someone who's like kind of very new to disc golf. Like that's always one I would kind of like steer them toward, because like, you can do quite a bit. It'll like teach you a lot right out the gate, and also is like, well, give you some fake distance a little bit if you like cannot throw a disc yet. That'll like really start teaching you how to throw and give you some distance off the tee. So I think it's a very interesting disc, because I mean, uplink, I don't know if you throw an uplink or not, Travis, but that's probably a good one to go for, because the uplink is like not as flippy as the Paradox, but still very flippy. So uplink still stays in my bag. I don't use it a ton anymore. Jason and I were just talking about this. We both have uplinks in our bag. We don't use them a ton, but when you need that, like that shot, that is a shot you need, or you need something a little touchy forehand. You're scrambling, but you need it to go a forehand to go left as a right-handed player. That's a great disc if you have the touch. If you really need like a standstill shot, but you need it to turn right on backhand, that's a great disc for it. And so I maybe ask your buddy if he has these discs. I would maybe try an uplink.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Yeah, and I found the same thing with the Paradox. Like, there's a dirty 90-degree turn onto the fairway around some trees and bushes on the back nine on our course here, and it's one that like I throw on a forehand around it because I just don't have that Hyzer angle yet, and it's got to get around to the right there, and so I throw it as a forehand, and like it would turn back over and flatten out and float down the fairway some. It looked like I was a magic player to some of the guys I was playing with. So it was like, yeah, you got to get one of these in your bag. So no, I really like that disc. It treats me well.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Paradox is kind of unique, Brad. I think the Paradox is somewhat unique for it being a max weight -4 turn, because they have like, Dyno discs has some easy turn discs, but they're super lightweight. The Pearl is another really popular -4 speed option, but it's 150 grams. So for those max weight, easy turn discs. And what's beautiful is you have like the Paradox is super flippy option, but the uplink steps in as for Brad and like Jason's arm speed, the Pearl or the uplink fits that slot. But if you got a faster arm speed than them, then the Detour kind of falls into that slot for them. And so it's very interesting. MVP's done a better job than a lot of people on being able to, they know that shot is really helpful, and they've scaled it with arm speed as they've continued to flesh out that lineup over time, which is really sick. So I want to go to we're pushing our time here, and so I want to make sure that we give time to talk about the recommendation. So real fast, you mentioned you're like, I putt with like 4 different putters at the same time, which I would have thought was like an odd thing until I played with a guy named Eli this weekend, and he was doing the exact same thing. Like, you know how you go through a round and you play with people, and eventually you know, like, oh, Brad's putting with a blue putter, Travis putting with a red putter, I'm putting with another like a blue putter. And so you're looking around the basket and you're like, red, blue, check. I can go ahead and putt. Like, I can go ahead and throw whatever. And Eli was playing, nice to meet him. But he was putting with 4 different putters. And so it was like, sometimes it was a black disc, sometimes it was a clear disc, sometimes it was a blue disc. And you're like, okay, I can't really count. So I just have to kind of look at Eli and be like, are you good, brother? All right. Okay. He's thrown. All right. 6, 6, 6. So you're putting 4 different putters. What all are you putting with? And then we want to talk like throwers.
Okay. So, I mean, I should clarify, when I'm doing a bunch of different putters, it's just when I'm practicing, when I'm out doing putting practice. So I got a couple of each, a Scarab, an Alpaca, and a Myth from Infinite. Just kind of wanted to get a few of those to see what the difference was between them. And I thought, I'll get a couple of each and feel what's comfortable and see what I like, and then maybe pick one and then go with that. For putting practice and stuff, I throw, 4, or sometimes I throw the Envy in there too, and the Aquarion as well, just to stack it up a little bit more, get 10 out of there. But yeah, when I'm putting out during a round, I got a Scarab that I keep in the bag, and the Aquarion, and I mostly use those two. The rest of the putters kind of have stuck into like my putting training bag. So, and then for throwing wise, like, I don't know if you'd consider it a putter or not, but if I'm throwing a putter off the tee, it's the Envy. I really like that disc. It's just kind of, I like it from a short range for putting. It's got a little bit different of a hand feel than the other discs I mentioned, but still like it from close there. It's pretty reliable. And then from far, it's got a good, like, holds a nice straight line and has a nice fade at the end of it. So really like that one for throwing off the tee.
Okay.
Yeah. From the guy who has 3 Envies in his bag, big Envy fan over here. So glad to hear that. So you're mainly putting with your Scarab or your Aquarion, right?
Yeah, during rounds, those are the go-tos.
So do you ever throw the Myth during a round, like for approaches and whatnot?
I haven't, but it's only just because I've been trying to maintain the integrity of those putters. It's like base plastic, and I throw in my base plastic Scarab that I got, and it's like man, you hit anything and it's like immediate gouge in it, or so I'm like, still hitting enough trees and not hitting enough gaps to not want to throw those off the tee quite yet. So someday, after I settle on one of these guys, I'll probably start throwing some of those off the tee to see how they react. But right now in the circle, kind of all 5 of those discs are doing the same thing for me. But maybe, if once I get out to that 40 feet range, maybe that's when I should be, I'll notice a little bit of a difference in how they're flying for me.
Yeah. There's a video. I'm looking at Brad's shirt. He's wearing a Trash Panda shirt. There's a video coming out on his channel. We did 9 questions with Robbie C. And on the last hole, Jesse asked me about Birdie Blend Wizards. And he's like, do you have any with you? And I had just before that trip taken my throwing Birdie Blend Wizard out and put like a really overstable one in, which was a mistake. I was going to elevation. But he was like, why don't you chuck one of them off this like super picturesque mountain hole? And I was like, these are my putting butters. I'll do it for you, Jesse. And so I grabbed my like Circle 2 one and ripped it. And you can just, now that the listeners will hear that story, when you watch that, you can just see my fear like as I'm going to throw that disc, like, please don't ruin it. Please don't ruin it. Please don't ruin it. So I feel that even as someone who I would say, Travis, I feel like I can hit a lot of gaps. I still feel terror when it comes to throwing putting putters. So no worries there. Talk to us about, you have this disc in your bag that has a puddle top to it. It's a 1-speed. I'm not going to mention its name, but you have it in there. What does it do for you in terms of like that helpful approach game alongside the Envy?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, I've probably thrown it like all of 5 times. It's not even in my bag right now. I loaded it up into my bag. I cut down my bag actually after loading up and sending you the link and stuff, Robbie, and was like, I just wanted a lighter bag and was like, is this really doing anything for me that my Envy isn't? And it wasn't in my trials with it. So I haven't, I don't have a spot for it right now. It's on disc RPM in my bag, but it's not, I haven't really, I don't know. It's funny. It's like I was saying to the guys in the BFAM Discord that it's like throwing a chunk of meat. Like, it's just like, it's like the dumbest feeling disc to throw. Like, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be, somebody's cup of tea, and not saying that it wouldn't be mine either, but it just felt like a low intelligence disc as it came out of my hand. It just didn't. It didn't. No, I'm not saying that people who use it, but
we just got canceled.
It just felt like
I'm clipping
a
that.
dumb feeling disc. Like, I don't even know. Like, so whatever. I'm not trying to talk trash on it, but it just was like it's just one of those things that I was like, what is this? So but whatever. I don't have any 1-speeds that I'm throwing right now in my bag, so that could be the feel of them all, but it just was one of those things. The Envy's my go-to in that range anyways. Put a little bit of Hyzer on it if I wanted it to sit flat and lay down or whatever quick, and that's the story there.
Hey, you saved it on the, I don't have any 1-speeds in my bag. I think that the 1-speeds in general are a very, very unique sort of twist to things in terms of they feel very odd. They feel very different. Like, and I've been trying to work this tunnel shot into my bag, and he just sent me a couple other molds, and I really want to support this manufacturer. So I'm like trying to find, honestly, like a slot to work it in. But there's a very real chance that the tunnel shot may like find its way out and one of these other molds finds its way in type deal. And I've enjoyed that because the tunnel's a 2-speed. So it feels more normal than, let's say, a Berg or a Glitch might feel. Both great. Both have a slot, and most people should have a slot in lots of people's bags. But when you're learning, I would say that it's not like the perfect learning disc by any means, because they're so touchy to be able to hit consistently that it's sort of a fun mess around with the disc. So we talked overstable approach discs. I kind of prepped you with this, Travis, and asking like, have you ever tried any traditional overstable putt and approach discs? And that's the category. If you guys listening haven't connected those dots yet, we tried to hint at it the whole time. And I feel like we were kind of direct, but so
I did too.
we talked about like, have you tried a lot of them? And you said no, and you're using an Envy for an approach, and we happen to have, as he mentioned, 3 Envies in his bag, the perfect prototype for this of what is, because there's so many listeners that are where you're at, Travis, whether they're 3 months in and experiencing this or they're 8 years in and experiencing this. Why make the jump from an Envy to an overstable putt and approach disc? Like, why do we need it? So, Brad, what did we have you try today? And knowing this, because I did not, I don't know if I did, or maybe I did. I told Brad, like, he has an Envy. That's like what he's using right now. I don't know if I did.
I don't
not.
think you told me that.
Yeah.
Which is
I said,
good.
I think as I said, he's just using like a somewhat stable putter.
Yeah, something like that. So I threw the Mint, whoops, upside down, the Mint by Clash. And then I also threw the Savior by Latitude 64. So both great discs. Robbie, I'm going to let you lead this conversation. I'll just give you the feedback from the testing, just because I feel like again, this is going to come down to preference a lot, but I think we can talk about like why Envy versus these discs, and I can probably speak to that really well too.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to a term that Travis, you snuck in so masterfully, but it's probably one of the most well said terms we've ever used, because we talk about hand feel a lot, but you said maybe there's some hand blindness going on. And so I was like, okay, so in terms of hand blindness, you're using the Envy for approaches. What I know, Brad, I've even seen you like forehanding an Envy is something you'll do, but it's not something you're like, oh, I'm trying to like mush an Envy.
No.
Whereas these can actually like have a little bit more. So talk about hand feel difference in terms of like using the Envy as sort of our comparison to these on a forehand and a backhand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, for an Envy, it definitely feels like a putter, right? It definitely feels rounded. It feels like, a slower speed disc. And for me, like on a forehand, again, Robbie said, I'll throw an Envy on a forehand, but it's usually like a little chip up. Like I don't want to throw my zone because I don't want to like wobble out at a lower speed, and I don't want it to like hit and roll. That's usually the scenario I'm talking about. So like an Envy, and the reason I don't really throw my zones on backhand is just because like the counter argument to this, but Envy feels like a throwing putter. It feels like I can throw it hard on backhand. And that rounded rim just really makes me feel like I have this grip and can like get a slower speed disc like out there. Now, when it comes to like a zone or an approach disc, I'm going to show you on video here, but like see that shelf like that's naturally there. That's very different than say, sorry, I had to grab an Envy so you can see like this is rounded, like it feels like a putter. And again, if I'm throwing a putter, I'm kind of like, even if I'm throwing a throwing putter, I'm not necessarily going for like this type of grip, like a pinch type grip, like I would like a driver or a mid range. I still am kind of like not fanning it, but I'm kind of like wanting that finger like out here to kind of like just, I don't know, something about it. But with something like an approach disc like this, it just really like sets that angle, really lets it sit really nicely in my hand for a forehand. I even threw both of these on backhand during the testing. I liked them both on backhand, honestly, because they just fit really well in my hand, but they feel like they have the appropriate level of grip available from a shape standpoint to like hit them with some heat, if you will, like hit it with some power. So I think that hand feels very different and very unique because it feels like it's designed to be thrown hard, I guess, if that makes sense.
That is, yeah. I was reading a Reddit post yesterday that was like terms that annoy you in disc golf or something like that, and people were like, I hate how everyone says torque resistant and all that. Like, and you know what? To a degree, like someone was trying to explain to me that they get like that their forehand gets way more spin than their backhand, and we just like we know from Tectus numbers that's not true for most people. It definitely is possible, but it's their hand speed gets so much faster, which is why they feel like they can throw farther. But faster hand speed, lower spin. That's why you need more overstable discs. Not a torque thing. It's literally, it just doesn't spin as much. So I love that idea of like they're able to be thrown farther or thrown harder, which to me, that feels like a commitment thing. Like it, when I feel like I'm allowed to throw it harder, I'm able to commit to the shot more. It's hard to commit on those soft approaches and still get a consistent flight out of it.
Yeah, like an approach disc to me just feel, I guess aggressive is the word I want to use. Like it feels like you need to throw it aggressively. It needs to like react aggressively. Like, I don't know. I don't know why I feel that way. They just feel very specific versus like a mid-range. And it's a 4-speed versus a 5-speed, right? So like it feels that much different between that speed, that one like level of speed. But, and again, the shape of it, the overstability is just like a more, yeah, I mean, we say like attack the green, right? So like I feel like like it's aggressive and it needs to be like it's an attack type disc. I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. So you took them out to a field. Another thing that we mentioned here is that Travis, you're throwing the NV off the tee, like you're using it there. You use it for short approaches, but you're also able to throw it off the tee. So, Brad, talk to us about the variance that you see in terms of like, okay, I'm throwing a more of an approach style shot or a tee shot with it. How does it handle on both of those?
So, I don't know. I think an approach style disc, I'm kind of throwing with the same thing in mind. Cause again, in my mind we're talking about overstable approaches, right? So, off the tee, and I was doing this like backhand versus backhand and forehand. It's like if I'm throwing it off the tee, then I want to hang these things out wide. I've got to have space to play with. Like I want them to like go out wide and like dump in to get close, whether I'm trying to avoid an obstacle or like maybe I'm on a tee shot and I have like a lot of room to play with on the left, but like the right is pretty tight. Then I'll like forehand and overstable approach disc if it's not too far, right? So I think off the tee, I'm really kind of thinking like, okay, so like my zones, I feel pretty comfortable out to like 220-ish, something like that on forehand. So I'm thinking like, okay, if I yam this off the tee shot, number one, do I have the space to play with for error? Because there may be some error, right? And do I have the time also to let it fade out the way it's going to fade out? So space and time is what I'm thinking about off the tee. Versus approach, I may like take a little bit more. I think it is possible to be like touchy with these discs also, like, or finesse. Maybe finesse is the word, because you do like, okay, maybe, well, this one, you know, my miss here is to the right, so I need to forehand this approach disc and let it kind of skip up the hill, right? Or I need to land this thing less precise. That's maybe the question you're asking, Robbie. With my zones or like my overstable approach disc, I'm like less worried about being exactly precise on like the pole of the basket, right? I'm like, here's a 20-foot circle I need to hit, or here's a 25-foot circle or 30-foot circle. I'm trying to hit at the edge and like let it kind of skip in or do its thing on the inside. That's a very long-winded answer, so hopefully that was helpful.
No, it was. So shot shapeability with these two, because the Mint, I think, would be argued that like looking at it, the Mint would feel like it's more overstable. So how did what was the stability difference between the two for you?
I think the Savior was more overstable.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But I did feel like the Mint went farther. I could throw it farther for whatever reason. It kind of wanted it, which again, reading the flight numbers would seem opposite. So, yeah. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I think like maybe just the bevel on the Savior's like a little bit more aggressive. It was like, because I did have some like headwind, which was like a good test for this. And the Savior like was really not affected by it at all. And like the Mint, like I could tell the wind was like picked up a little bit more. Like still an overstable approach disc. It didn't like turn on me or anything like that, but it like definitely like hung up, like the wind hung it up a little bit more than the Savior did. It was a decent amount of headwind too. So I personally, I think like the Savior was a little bit more overstable. It could have just been the ones I grabbed, but I had two I was throwing and they both were kind of like that. The Mint was not understable by any means, but if I'm like giving a winner to somebody, it would be the Savior probably.
That was what I was going to ask is, so knowing that we're coming from a Glow Envy as our like, okay, this is where the comfort level, bang. Do you feel that the Mint is too close to that to really see a difference? Like, would you just default back to it, and so the Savior jump is worth it, or what's kind of your vibe as Mr. Envy?
Well, to me, that's just two different whole shots I'm selecting, I guess. Like, I'm not, there's no, in the way I play, there's no confusion between should I throw an Envy here or a Zone here. Like, those aren't even the same, like, headspaces, I guess, for me. Because Envy, Envy, and again, this is maybe a mindset change we're maybe asking you to maybe consider is right now your Envy is kind of like your approach, your, like, you throw it off the tee, you kind of approach with it, it's kind of your approach disc. Like, my Envy is not my approach disc. My Envy is my driving putter. Like, that's the one I'm throwing off the tee that I can throw max distance with. If I need a putter type tee shot, if I need like a 270 foot get to the basket second or third shot, that's an Envy. But like my zones and Envies do not intersect. The only time, which has what Robbie's seen me do, is okay, maybe I'm like, I don't know, 70 feet from the basket, and I'm like, and maybe there's some danger around. I'm like, man, I really don't want to mess with any skipping, with any like wobbly, like half-hearted zone forehand approach. So I'll throw the Envy because it's a little straighter, even with a little less rotation, and I just need a little straighter, like upshot with a tiny bit of fade. So that's like the only time there's any crossover, and that's kind of like, as I season in zones, there's like less crossover even in that tiny scenario. So I would say like they don't. If I think either, truthfully, I think the Savior or the Mint's going to be good for you because you haven't really like messed with that section of your game. And it's funny you said this with your putters, which to me, I threw base plastic overstable approach disc on purpose because there's also a beautiful thing that happens with overstable approaches where they are your workhorse. They do get beat up. And then all of a sudden you have two Saviors or two Mints in your bag, and one's really overstable and one's like straight and then sneaky overstable at the very end. And like that shot is a wonderful shot to have. And it's, in my opinion, the only way to get there is to beat up something. I don't know that there's a disc really to just like grab off the shelf to have that kind of flight.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, Precious Child is only born out of the reality of it all happening. My friend Josh in Lynchburg, actually on a foundation video, I had straight pig in the back because I had 3 different stages of pigs. And straight pig, I got really mad in a foundation video at New London. Surprise, surprise. Because that course destroys me mentally. And I just full on yeeted my pig on video into the woods. And my friend Josh was playing New London, left a disc on hole 7 and romped back through the woods coming from like hole 15 or 16 and came across my pig and was like, how did you get out here? But I was like, this is perfect because now that pig is back and it's flying crazy straight, but it's still a pig. So it's going to finish. So I love, that was a great decision, Brad, on like going with the base plastic. Cause especially if you've not started, this will give you a chance to sort of see that season. And if you really love what it does, thankfully, because neither of them are pigs, the world actually loves you. And so therefore you can buy a premium plastic one if you want that like long holding overstable option. So Brad, what would you say? Final decision time. Which one's headed his way?
Let me see.
Or do you want to let Travis pick? What's the vibe?
I'm really gonna go. I think I have to go mint for this one. I think mint. Changed my mind. Savior. We're going Savior. That's the one. We're gonna go this one. And this is like the world's worst metric to gauge this on, but I had so many near aces this morning with this particular Savior that I gotta send that out your way. Again, I think both of these are going to serve exactly the purpose. I don't think there's such a difference between the two that one is a bad recommendation versus the other. I think they're both going to get you into like the overstable approach. You're going to fall in love with forehanding overstable approach, and you're going to learn how to season in discs and see the beauty of that as well. And then maybe get you started on some like mold minimalization, which would be awesome. So we're going to send the Savior out. I'm also going to send you this FD from my personal collection as well.
Dude, Travis, how you feeling, man?
I'm feeling real good, boys. Thanks so much. I really appreciate all the words of wisdom and having me on today. It's been a blast. I didn't mean to. Hopefully nobody's too offended by what I said. I really didn't mean anything bad about the disc that shall not be named. Honestly, it's an operator error. If anything, I just haven't thrown many 1-speeds or any 1-speeds except that. So, I really got nothing to compare it to. So,
hey, no, Travis, let me tell you, man, as the guy on the internet who is probably the only person on the internet who's throwing more shade at the Berg than me is Luke from Swanky Disc Golf.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
true.
I will be the first to admit that because the Birdie fam's cooking up an idea, Brad, for a video for me where they're going to pick 3 discs that are like disliked or quote bad discs, and then make me play against people using their whole bag to see is it the archer or the arrow type deal.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
And they were like, oh, if we go with discs that Robbie hates, we already know, like, we can build those 3 discs super fast. Robbie's putting with a Berg the whole time. And then someone chimed in and quoted me and was like, Robbie's already said that the Berg does what it does really well. It just stops there. I will give us the saving grace here, Travis. The Berg does extremely well at its thing. I just think personally that a lot of other discs can accomplish what the Berg does and more, which is where I and Lai have my greatest hang up with it. But that's fine. So
yeah, coming from cooking world, like I know people would have like a lettuce knife in their bag or something like that, in their knife bag, and I was like, a knife that does one thing, like, come on, all these other knives can do it too, right? Like I can cut anything up with this knife here, but a lettuce knife. So I'm a guy who likes, give me something that can do more than one thing, because I'd rather do that than have something just perfectly curated for every different scenario and be carrying around 64 discs or whatever.
Yeah. But you know what? If you love your lettuce knife, let us know, and it'll be good. So, Travis, we appreciate having you on, man. And would you be willing to come back in a future episode and let us know how the Savior flies for you?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Be an honor.
Awesome. We'll look forward to having you in a future episode then, man.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Brad, I'm just saying, man, well played on the longer that we like sit in the truth of you intentionally picked the base plastic ones. It's so genius. So genius.
Thank you. They do call me the Albert Einstein of base plastic. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. So no, I thought it'd be a good, again, I don't know this stuff about the guest, but I can assume like, if someone isn't really throwing an overstable approach to this, then maybe like this is a good way to get them, into it. And I think there's something, and what made me think of it was I was looking on my shelf behind me yesterday and I saw a jawbreaker zone that I used to have in my bag, and I almost grabbed it and put it in my bag. And I was like, no, you're not changing your bag right now, even if it's something and you know how it flies. Because I have a different zone right now that kind of flies a little straighter, like a Z jawbreaker one from USDGC last year. But no, we're good. I'm glad I made a good choice. They were fun to throw. It did, like, the field work did make me just start to question, as I've questioned for about a year now, like why I don't throw my zone on backhand. Like, I just don't think there's a really good reason anymore. I don't love how it feels, but I probably should get used to it. I think it like combines some shots for me, which would be nice.
Yeah. I will like being out of town. I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame this video on my channel, but I got asked multiple times while I was playing, like, how do you play when you play a course blind? Like,
Mhm.
are you good at playing courses blind? And my honest answer is yeah. Like, I'm pretty decent at playing courses blind, but it's just because I spend a lot of time in a field learning, okay, I can throw my reactor 320. I can throw my reactor soft 280. I can throw my, this pig does this. And so when I step up, if I'm given the right information, 9 times out of 10, it feels 7 times out of 10 will be more accurate. 7 times out of 10, I feel like I can actually throw exactly what I want
Mhm.
to happen based on the distances and things like that. So it like it helps. But as I was doing that, I talked about putting a new wizard in the bag, like a new overstable wizard, because as my form was dialed in on the backhand, then I hurt my elbow, and then we had to relearn it, and it's backhand starting to come back to me. But birdie blends have a decent amount of hook to them, but if you throw them flat hard, they really hold pretty straight, and they don't really have the finish that I was looking for. And beating in base plastic pigs has made it really tough for me to find that throwing putter slot, because I'm like, I just have pigs that do that.
Right.
So it's like, I want a glidier version of straight pig that is going to go up, it's going to sail, and it's going to drop. And like this new wizard that I put in is overstable and it has the drop, but it has no glide.
Right.
So I like my pig glides more than that wizard, which is
Crazy.
not good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can feel that in my soul of maybe I just got to try an NB. I haven't thrown one in a while, so maybe I throw that in there as like just to see how it rips comparatively. So, but speaking of stuff that we have new, I'll start us in what's new in the warehouse, because how's that, Brad?
Yeah, that's a new. I like that twist.
And that is in the bag discs, y'all. We have in the bag discs, and for those of you who are not prepared, you haven't downloaded it yet, there's an app, and the app is important here for in the bag discs, because we have in the bag pigs, we have in the bag zones.
Boom, boom.
And I'll tell you, if you don't have the Foundation Disc Golf app, you missed out on the sales-a-thon that happened last Friday. And last Friday in the app, where they're going to be going lives, they're going to be doing special promos, special content, stuff like that. They went live and they put Hunter and Trevor on the green and said, hey, you guys got to make 10 putts with pressure from, it looked about 25 feet. And sure enough, we saw the real answer there. Trevor that day was a significantly better putter than Hunter.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah,
that was
30% off of Discraft for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Which included this in the bag zone, by the way.
Yeah. And so there's not a ton of zones left. There's still a good amount of pigs left, which I love that we had that opportunity for like those of you who missed out on initial drops. You still have the chance to like go pick one up. But if you missed out on the Origins, you missed out on the FDs. They were both in the bag stamps. This one's so clever because it looks like our logo, but it says if it's good. So Jawbreaker zones, Z zones, R Pro pigs, lots of options available. Go check it out. I'd be willing to bet that a solid sale, those zones don't make it through the weekend. So go check it out. It would make our day if you guys were going nuts and you were like, hey, that's let's go check out. And there's no in the bag discs available on the website. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, we did order significantly more than last time because of the demand. So thank you all for that. Yeah. We actually sold out of our discs before Grip Locked and Tour Life, just throwing that out there, whatever that's worth. So
it would be a crazy world, y'all, for being the small fry of the podcasts on the Foundation Podcast Network. If we were the only podcast that can't, because we're not going Tour Life numbers and talking about every week like, oh, how many shirts have we sold? We're not going Grip Lock doing that. You guys are just the best. You're doing amazing support. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of both of our hearts.
For sure.
It blows our minds that y'all are we truly believe y'all are the most loyal listeners on the Foundation Podcast Network. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And hey, another awesome thing happening is, I guess, when you're listening to this on Friday, go to Robbie's Instagram, wish him a happy belated birthday. His birthday's on the 4th. So happy birthday, Robbie.
Appreciate it.
Also, beside Robbie being born, another amazing thing that is happening on Thursday. I don't know if we can see it here, but we've got Robbie C. embossed ozones from Trash Panda. So I actually bag an ozone, Robbie. I don't know if I told you that.
It's so good, dude.
It fit that, like, I kept going like diamond or jackalope, or I forget what else I tried in there as well. But like, it just is fitting right in that slot that I wanted to right before my FDs. So that's kind of where I have it right now. I know this is an 8-speed, right?
Yep.
But it technically, for me, stability wise, is before my FDs. But not all of them are swirly. There's a couple of different colorways available, but has the Robbie C logo embossed on them. Very, very cool. And there's also there's very few Robbie C Trash Panda minis as well available on the site. Those dropped Thursday with his video. He went out to see Jesse, did all kinds of cool stuff. You helped like prep the machines and stuff for these too, right?
I did. Yeah. So we got to my video that drops tomorrow, or it dropped the day before. It dropped the day before you guys are watching this. We went and made a disc in his garage. And then I got to head to the warehouse and make discs inside the warehouse. And there's a surprise where that Robbie C like hot stamp that embosses the discs, they snuck it onto the hot stamping machine without me knowing. So like I had no idea it was going to happen. And Jesse kept being like, yo, we need to like, do you want a hot stamp one? Do you want a hot stamp one? And I was like, I mean, I can, like, I'm going to press the 2 buttons. So you're going to go, like, I'd never done it before, but like, it wasn't what I was most excited for. And he caught my reaction on camera of like hot stamping it and pulling off a Robbie C stamp for the first time. And I was like,
that's crazy.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's in the video too. So it's a really, really fun video. It's, yeah. So, but those will drop there. We've got a limited amount of the Robbie CO zones. And so very, very excited for that. And I hope you guys love them. This disc, we're watching people that have never thrown 300 before be able to clear 300 with this. I've cleared 400 a couple times with just an ozone. Because that disc is so good. Like, get it up in the air. It has a decent amount of turn to it. I would say it flies much more like a -2-1 than a -3-1. But if you're a natural flat or natural anti thrower, you'll feel that -3. But as a Hyzer boy, -2. So
it does go really far. Jesse sent me a couple a while back, and I just chucked them in my yard, and I was like, wow, those both went over 300 feet, and I was not even trying. So that, very good disc. Make sure you check them out. I believe Jesse told me that I know the ozones are sold out on Trash Panda's site. Most of the ozones are sold out or very close to it. And we're probably going to have some of the last runs for a bit. So, now's the time to try them, support Robbie. And, very excited about that. And I guess one more exciting thing, we got a lot of exciting warehouse stuff this week. So apologies for the extended cut here, but, here's the big boy.
Yeah.
Dark Horse Aceathon zones. These are ESP Flex Jawbreaker. So contest wise, you buy one of these guys, you go out, you film yourself trying to get an ace, you get an ace, you send it in. We're going to pick 5 of the best aces. All of those people are going to get prizes, and then there will be one grand prize winner with the best ace. That person is going to get an amazing prize from us and Discraft. It's a huge monetary value. So very excited. Make sure you I pick a couple up, honestly. If you're going to go out and try to ace, it is annoying to try to ace with one disc, and you do have to ace with that disc and prove it for to be entered for the prize.
Yeah. I know that feeling. It has hit me that I have an ace with Precious Child, and it's a video idea that I'm basically going to go, and you know how people are like, if you throw over and over again on the same hole, it's not an ace. The beautiful part for this contest, Doesn't matter. Like cubby aces is what people call them. Fake aces, whatever. You know what? Both of those still include the word ace.
Yeah.
So it counts if it goes from tee to basket, one throw, that's an ace. Always has been in my book, but you can nail that. And I'm like, what if I had a day where I just play disc golf on a loop and just play the same pitch and putt over and over again until I ace with Precious Child?
Oh.
And I feel that with one disc. So I agree with Brad. If you're going to try to ring it up, the guys did a video yesterday on Tuesday of the week that this drops that was them acing, and none of them got it on a first throw, but being able to dial in that shot matters a lot to get the ace a lot faster. So
absolutely. So make sure you check those out. If you're watching or listening to this video, I would go there now to make sure they're still there. There's some hype, and these things tend to go pretty quickly. So just make sure you're there, ready to go. If you're listening to this, make sure you just pause, jump over there, make sure you check it out.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've got some great. I already seeing pictures in the work Slack of, hey, there's some big drops coming next week as well. Really, really sick. So definitely, we've always got good stuff cooking up over at foundationdisc.com. Make sure recently restocked Your Best Friend. So if you find something, it's amazing. You're like, wow, I think I could ace with this disc, and you find it's good.
Keep it in the bag. We'll see you all next week for 110.
110.